like the global mining industry, they want to contribute to sustainable development, and they want to make sure that mines are operated as efficiently and as they can be. So how do you define that? How do you really assess that? Well, that gets tricky, but the sort of things we need to look at is the energy, so diesel and electricity, and so where does that electricity come from? Water resources, how much water is used at a particular mine and how is water managed on a mine site? But also, what are the impacts on water resources in that region? So making sure we manage all the mine waste properly, the tailings and also the waste rock. And so that way we're not leaving problems that, that future generations will have to clean up. So there's a lot of ways I think we can start to assess, a sustainable mine and how environmentally sort of benign it can be. But that requires a lot of work, and it requires a very high level commitment from companies. It requires good regulation. And sometimes, in all parts of the world, we don't have that combination. So, but when it does come together, it can work quite well, and you can see mines that are producing various metals or minerals that I think are reasonable for the sort of the value that we get out of them, whether that be copper, gold, or zinc, steel, iron, etc. So. But that's the thing, we've really got to make sure we approach it on a very holistic basis, really think about all of these things, how things like water resources and so on actually link to social aspects and so on as well. Because if we have unacceptable environmental impacts, that will lead to social impacts and economic impacts. So if we don't get that, that focus right, then all we end up is with a lot of impacts and not a lot of benefits. So really that's the focus that I think we need to be taking. If you look at Australia, the experience we have is that mines have got better compared to before we started environmental regulation from about the 1970s onward. Mines weren't required to rehabilitate, tailings often weren't managed very well, they were just placed in a tailings dam or occasionally at a few sites are allowed to discharge straight down rivers. But since the 1970s we've built environmental management, we assess projects before they're given approval, and so that we actually a lot better than we used to be. But the problem is mines are now hugely bigger than they ever used to be. And so we're not dealing with mines that are now 100,000 tonnes or 500,000 tonnes of processing of ore per year. We're now dealing with mines that are processing up to 10 or 20 million tonnes a year. And for some mines, some of our coal mines and iron ore mines in particular, they're now digging up hundreds of millions of tonnes a year at individual mines. And so the scale now is so much larger. And I think this is what we're seeing globally as well. And if we haven't adopted rigorous standards to meet that scale, we end up with leaving major risks like we saw recently in Brazil at Samarco and at Mount Poly in Canada and so on. And it's the same analogy you could make with Deepwater Horizon in America and the oil industry. So yes, our standards have got a lot better, but there's still a long way to go. We're constantly chasing our tail, I guess, to make sure that the level of environmental standards that we're operating at really match the nature of the risks that we're dealing with in the industry. If we're looking at the relationships between governments and mining companies and communities, there's often a lot of tension, and we can't sugarcoat that. It doesn't matter whether we're in South America, we're in Australia or elsewhere. One arm of government wants economic development, and often that means the royalties that flow from mining. Another arm of government is there to protect the environment and public health. And communities, they can be complex, and they're not just sort of one view that you ever get in a community. And so there are some parts of the community that want to see environmental protection. And for sometimes that means that they will say no to mining. Other times you get communities that prefer the jobs. And sometimes you get communities that you can say, right, if a company meets these standards, then we're quite happy. And if they get that balance right. But part of the problem, and it's not just Australia, but it's a global problem really, is making sure that government is independent, it's resourcing its regulators properly, and there is that sort of inspection and oversight of mining, such that it can meet sort of standards that communities expect. So that way we do sort of maximise the sort of the benefits and the rewards from mining, but ideally also minimise a lot of the environmental and social risks that also come with mining. And when you get that combination right, it can work quite well, but that requires a lot of effort, and it's certainly not easy to do.